ThorSport issuing this press release. ThorSport Racing announces a new chapter for its storied number 88 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series entry. Three-time series champion Matt Crafton will complete his full-time role after the 2025 season. His 23-year partnership with Menards is the longest-running driver primary sponsor relationship in NASCAR history. Teammate and 2024 series champion Ty Majeski will pilot the number 88 full-time in 2026. Majeski followed up here by responding, "Thank you to Duke, Rhonda, Allison, and Menards for this opportunity. The last 5 years have been a dream come true. I am looking forward to the next chapter in 2026 with ThorSport Racing, but for now, I'm ready to defend our 24 title with our 98 Soda Sense truck." And a more expanded version of that through a Notes app screenshot as well. Brandon, what is your reaction to the news that Matt Crafton will be stepping away from full-time competition at the conclusion of this season?
The first thing I thought about, Ben, was, wow, these stats that Matt Crafton has been holding for all these years are finally going to come to a close, as far as, consistent starts and all that. But in the right way, though. This is him, it's on his terms, or at least on ThorSport's terms, where he's stepping away from full-time racing. So I think that I would much rather it be this way than from injury, where he's forced to step away. But also it comes at a good time too, because I think his truck series career has kind of taken a turn for the worse in the last couple of years, not getting the good finishes that we know Matt Crafton for, and also just some aggressive driving that's kind of left a sour taste in some other in the garage's mouth. Don't know what that's been about really, but we've been covering it here on Grid Encore. But I mean, you go back not too far ago for his last championship, and when he was winning all the time, he was the household name. He is the household name of the truck series and one of the longest tenured. And so it's going to be hard to not see him there every week in 2026. But I think it's coming at a fitting time, and at least he can come back when he wants to, or on a limited schedule. But I think it's at a really good time, all things considered.
So I'm just going to read a thread that I put together this afternoon because I have very mixed feelings on the whole Matt Crafton experience, I guess, if you will here. For those that don't know, grew up a fan of the truck series. Matt Crafton was one of the guys that I pulled for, especially in the mid 2010s when he was his most successful, or experiencing his most successful years, rather. And just kind of trying to put a career retrospective on his story, because, I mean, he really has pretty much been racing in the series about as long as I've been alive. I was born in June of 1999. He made his truck series debut in the season finale in 2000 and has not missed a race since. And he's going to get to the end, assuming health, assuming that, Lord willing, there are no injuries or illness that sideline him for the rest of the season. He will reach a quarter of a century of consecutive starts in this series, which is no small feat and should be celebrated. Having said that, I think, to your point, Brandon, this is probably coming at the right time. And so let me just read what I put out there on X earlier this afternoon. I both love and hate Matt Crafton's story. Full disclosure, Crafton was one of my favorites watching the truck series growing up. It's hard to articulate my feelings this afternoon, but I'll do my best in the thread below. Let's start with the positives. I love his story as something that embodies what the truck series was founded to be. A place for damn good drivers who have a passion for racing, but couldn't land a ride on Sundays for whatever reason, to make their names. And make no mistake, maybe we've forgotten, but at his peak, Crafton was damn good. 3 championships, first back-to-back Champion Series history, titles in both a full season and this crazy playoff era, a 6-win season without a title, a 0-win season with a title. He did it all. And the streak. Oh, that consecutive start streak. We still don't talk about this enough, and I'll die on that hill. It's arguably more unbreakable than Jeff Gordon's record streak in Cup. Again, hope Matthew Owens is still in the chat room listening to this. I wrote about that in an op-ed for Brock Beard earlier this year as well. At the same time, I hate what the last few years have done for his legacy. The fight with Nick Sanchez at Talladega, arguably where his streak should have ended with a suspension. The bet with Travis Pastrana over beating Gray Ledbetter in Nitrocross. Outbursts on the radio that you'd expect from an immature rookie rather than a veteran of nearly a quarter century. Incidents like what happened at Richmond just this past weekend. And above all, a noticeable decline in performance. In hindsight, he probably should have stepped away 2 to 3 years ago. And that's what's so frustrating to me about his legacy. Is Matt Crafton a Hall of Famer? 3 years ago, I think the answer was clearly yes. Not first ballot, perhaps, but yes. But if there's ever been a case of, quote unquote, playing yourself out of the Hall of Fame in sports, this might be it. His win percentage is admittedly not great, given his start count, and it only continues to go down the longer he races. He and Jack Sprague both have 3 championships, but Sprague has nearly double the wins, 28 to 15, in roughly half the starts, 297 to 585 and counting. At the same time, long winless periods to both start and end a career shouldn't entirely erase a career's peak, and his peak from 2013 to 2015 in particular was fantastic. Put it all together, and it's one of the strangest careers and most complicated legacies in NASCAR history. Too long didn't read. It's hard to imagine the Truck Series without Matt Crafton. And yet, the more I consider the last few years, I can't help but think today's announcement is also a bit overdue. And Brandon, I know we talked about this earlier this year as well. Around, I think it was after Las Vegas is when I wrote that op-ed, and I said maybe Crafton could continue to do this for another 2 to 3 years based on the stability that he's enjoyed with that partnership. It seemed to me like he was somebody who had kind of earned the right to say when he was done. And yet, when you consider just how much his performance has declined, the second year in a row that he has missed the playoffs and quite frankly not been particularly close, he would have needed a win probably at a drafting track at that, or fuel mileage or a crazy situation like that to win a race this year. He hasn't had a top 5 finish in a year and a half. Spring Bristol of last year, if I remember correctly, was his last one. I think we can agree, but it's probably for the best that this is going to be it. You know, he's going to get to, again, 25 years is a nice round number. It's not an even number. It's not a number, but it's a nice round number nonetheless to cap an amazing career at. And again, take nothing away from his peak. 15 wins and 3 championships is better than the overwhelming majority of Truck Series drivers can say they've done. I just can't help but wonder, particularly with those controversies of the last few years, if, and I didn't know if it was possible. I mean, we talk about in other sports sometimes, people in the NFL asking, you know, is Russell Wilson playing himself out of a Hall of Fame with how mediocre his post-Seattle career has been? Or, you know, did Richard Petty or Jimmy Johnson damage their legacies by maybe not retiring when they should have? I think most people agree that that's not the case for them. But when you combine the lack of performance with the controversies that Matt Crafton's been involved in the last few years, the decline in his popularity, I think a lot of fans, you know, absolutely, it feels bad to say this, but roasting him and celebrating the news after, particularly this weekend at Richmond, it is a very complicated legacy, admittedly, and I don't know that any argument that he would have towards an honor like the NASCAR Hall of Fame got any stronger over the last 3 or 4 seasons than it would have had he stepped away a little bit earlier.
It's well said, and the whole thread was well thought of, and I know you've got a lot of passion behind those words. But yeah, the career has kind of been marred a little bit, and you know, it's hindsight is 2020, and of course, you know, if Michael Jordan knew, you know, that his career was going to peak at this year, and then you can retire and have a perfect career and not play anywhere else or tried to play minor league baseball, you know, then you would have done it. But you know, I think that's the human part of athletes around the world, and I think it's compelling too. You know, Russell Wilson's case too. You know, sure, he's not as great as he was with Seattle, but he's human. He's still trying to play the game, and I think you can look at it kind of like Richard Petty. Like it's not that they're keeping the same perfection that they did in their earlier years, but it's that they got the drive to keep keep going, and they've got the strength to keep playing the
Yeah.
game.
Well, I get what you're saying, Brandon, but I think there's a key difference there. I think Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest of all time in his sport.
He
I don't
is.
think
Yeah.
his. I mean, in hindsight, yes, he probably should have never come back after he hit the shot to win the '98 finals, and that would have been the perfect second ending to his career. I know he retired the first time and went to play baseball there, but as mediocre as those 2 seasons with the Wizards were, I don't think that ruins his I don't think it adds to his legacy particularly, but I don't think it does anything to damage it either. Richard Petty's the same way, arguably the greatest of all time in his sport. Jimmy Johnson, arguably, I mean, you could make an argument for, I'd say, about 5 different guys in NASCAR Cup Series competition. Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson are among them. I don't think Richard Petty's lack of wins from 1985 to 92 did much to damage his legacy because of how great he was. I don't think Jimmy Johnson running around in that open legacy car in the 84 car or not winning his last couple of years with Hendrick really did anything to damage his legacy. He's a 7-time champion. You can't take anything away from that. Matt Crafton does have 3 championships, but I think he's a lot more like a Russell Wilson in that sense. He had an amazing few years at his peak, a fantastic prime, but you're not necessarily going to list him. Like, nobody, I think, really is going to make an argument for Russell Wilson as the greatest quarterback of all time, right? I think
No.
consensus is probably Tom Brady, but you could maybe make an argument for the Joe Montanas and Peyton Mannings of the world, or a couple of other alternatives. I don't think Russell Wilson is one of those alternatives.
I mean, Joe Flacco is going to be quarterback for the Browns. Like,
yeah,
his career with Baltimore, I mean, should have ended there. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that's the argument there. Truck series wise, I think the best truck series drive. I mean, you can maybe say, I mean, Kyle Busch is an interesting because of his wins total. I don't know if he's ever going to run a full truck season. That would make his legacy in the series even more interesting there. But I think in terms of truck series drivers, it's probably Ron Hornaday Jr. But you can maybe make a case. Mike Skinner was the first champion. He won 28 races. Jack Sprague's a multiple-time champion, won 28 races. Maybe there's a couple of alternatives there. I don't know if Matt Crafton is quite at that level there. And then you see what Corey Haim is doing. I mean, even if Corey Haim goes and has a career on Sundays for 15, 20 years, I think you can look at Corey Haim and say, well, boy, when Corey Haim was in the truck series and he stayed for a solid 3 or 4 years, he was really good.
One to beat.
And that's why I hope and pray that he can cap this up to what we spent the beginning part of the show talking about. I hope that he wins this championship because, quite frankly, he's the only one that deserves it. And if we look back at his truck career without a championship, it's going to be crying shame. But, I just don't know if Crafton is quite in that tier. He had a much better career than, again, the overwhelming majority of truck series drivers could say they have. They would dream of winning 3 championships. They would dream of visiting victory lane 15 times. But you compare his win count to his start count, and the team that he's been with all of these years probably should have about twice as many wins as he does. He probably should have had a longer peak than he did. If he had had those things, then maybe he would be in that conversation. He has the 3 championships, which is, not anything to be ashamed of, obviously, but it does leave you wondering what it means for what, again, I think is one of the most complicated legacies in the history of our sport.